Good morning from New Zealand and Australia, Exiles. I'm Ziggy D here, joined by Chris Wilson. Once again, good morning, Chris.
Hey, how are things going?
Very good, very good. You guys always make our day on reveal day.
We
And
work very hard to do that, yeah.
a pretty spicy one this time. However, I do have to lead off with the most important question first before we get into the rest of the Q&A, and that is, were those training dummies the militia using real, or is it just an elaborate bait? Are we getting training dummies?
Sometimes to fish you need elaborate bait, so I think that's a good analogy there.
I think that might be a no, Chad. maybe in Path of Exile too. Then maybe I'll keep holding my breath for that one. But welcome back, folks. Please post your questions in the chat for our helpful mods to grab during this. As always, I have some questions pre-prepared based on my earlier watching of the announcements. You slipped some new stuff in there as well, like such as patch notes coming right after this time as well. So you guys are ready.
Yeah. It really helps having to write up a lot of the patch notes for the balance manifesto in advance. That means there's a lot of other stuff, obviously, but it's doable.
So early manifesto also means early patch notes. I thought early manifesto meant lots of early nerfs, but only a couple this time around.
And it also means early development, which is great as well.
That is very good. All right, well, we'll kick things off with the new Pinnacle content and Atlas of World changes. That is the big focus of this expansion, a big endgame update. And I have to say, the design of the new Eldritch bosses looks awesome, very creepy. Are the Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds being placed? Where are they being placed in challenge level related to the Maven? Are they above her or below her?
So the goal is that they're slightly more challenging. We do want to keep pushing the boundaries there. It's not massively so, but a key thing here is that you can roll the some mods on the keys that give you access to them once you've killed them for the first time. So after like the quest completion of it, you then get the ability to farm them, and that involves itemized versions of the maps. And because you can roll mods, of course, it lets you punch up the challenge and reward quite a lot higher than you would otherwise be able to do in any other fight. So it should be very interesting to see how that goes.
That's interesting. How does the rewards scale with changing that, with having like a rare version of them?
So my understanding is that the mods can increase the rewards in traditional ways with regard to increasing quantity of drops, but I'll just double check to see if there's any other special stuff. So I'm going to do the dev check emoji.
Oh, that's a record for dev check, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right off the bat.
So basically, Quant will scale all of their special drops as well. So whatever they're getting in terms of, uniques and currency that you want, you just scale it as hard as you can.
Ah, that's good, because it doesn't always scale those like special specific drops, but it sounds like it does in this case.
I think there's a specific note on the item that mentions that quantity affects it, which helps in this case. It will hopefully make it clear.
I remember that Maven was initially pitched at being like the highest level boss fight, so now we've got another tier above that. And then with craftable makes these fights tend to be a lot harder with the right combinations of modifiers.
What you'll probably find that if you play the fight without scaling it at all, like completely default settings, it's probably easier than the fixed Maven difficulty. But the average way that players are going to experience it with a comfortable level of juicedness is probably a bit punchier.
Okay, that's good then. That gives a bit of range. But also there's the underling bosses as well, which it sounds like you're encountering much more frequently.
Yeah, you get them on the way through the quest progression and also on the way to doing the farm cycle. So they're easier, of course. They still drop good endgame stuff, but just not quite as good as the absolute pinnacle ones do.
Do the new bosses have any memory games? Because I'm not very good at those.
I hear players love those. Now, we'll have to say, I honestly can't remember if there's a memory game.
Oh, no.
I passed that one.
Very good. So the Atlas has undergone like a ton of iterations now at this point, adding more complexity in some areas and depth, whereas it's been slimming things down in other areas. What have you guys learned from previous iterations of the Atlas so far, and how has this shaped the new generation that we're getting now?
This is kind of a very standard game design lesson, but simplicity and understandability matters, but you also don't want to lose any depth. And so to some extent, like what we did with Path of Exile 2's skill gem system, is we've tried to make this more approachable, right? Like when you look at the Atlas now, it's simple. There are just a bunch of maps. You work from bottom to top, fighting harder maps, and you don't have to worry about regions. You don't have to worry about repeating work or chasing conquerors around. It's quite straightforward. You don't have to understand the complexities of the watchstones, because the new void stones are so much simpler. You just stick them in as you get them, pretty much. And so at face value, it takes away a lot of the stuff that was hard for players to understand and annoying for players who did understand it. But then in return, we didn't want to lose any depth. And so we jammed it all in the passive tree. And so there's a lot of stuff there. But players who get that far in Path of Exile are very used to passive trees and understanding the type of opportunity cost and the decisions they're making. So it actually plays really well. And you can interact with the passive tree at so much earlier. In fact, so much of the rewards of the Atlas now are pushed really early in terms of you getting Eldritch implicits and getting to fight bosses and getting, good Atlas tree completion far, far earlier than before. Because we felt and agreed with players who were saying that previously it kind of felt like the endgame starts at the end of the endgame.
Yeah, that's like I feel like you really hit two things this time that I was super interested in seeing in the Atlas. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because it's the slimming down of the core progression system. So now you just kind of run maps from 1 to 16 as the core progression, right? Like you don't have to do any complicated steps of moving watchstones and chasing influence
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff to do the core progression. So that's much simplified now.
Yes.
There's not like any secret hoops there or anything you have to jump through, right?
Right, it's very simple. And the other thing is there's now 3 Atlas quest progressions that you can progress at your own pace. You've got 2 different new Eldritch horrors to chase with their sub-bosses, and you've got the Maven. And you can focus on one or all 3 or whatever you want to do. There's no penalty for not doing one. It's just a matter of which content and rewards you want to get.
So that's a good question then. Kind of where is Maven's position now in this whole progression system? Because before you had to constantly be witnessing bosses to get unlocked the passives, the passive tree. And my understanding is she still gives you some passives, but predominantly those passives come from just completing the bonus objectives on the maps themselves. Like I imagine 100 of those come from those, and then the remaining 17 from boss fights and Maven and whatnot. So where does she kind of sit now?
Right, in terms of the passive, so 117 come from completing maps, and then there's an additional 15 bonus points. So 11 are from the Maven encounters. So that's her primary purpose there, is giving you a bunch of points. And 5 of them are from the standard invitations. 6 of them are from the invitations that were previously called the Uncharted Realms encounters. There's also 4 more points that you get from the new siege bosses. So the 4 guys, the Searing Exarch, the Eater of Worlds, the Black Star, and the Infinite Hunger, all have a point each upon the time that you kill them the first time. And the Maven also has a more defined role in terms of itemizations. She's now the source for awakened gems, which of course are as powerful as they always have. Yeah, that's a complete lie. They're less powerful than they always have been, but as powerful as they were last league. Getting carried away with the marketing there. She also drops the Orb of Conflict, which of course is really important for the Eldritch mod crafting. So if you're wanting to perfect your Eldritch implicits, you're going to need to fight all 3 bosses so you can get A and B and the thing that lets you get one of them to the highest tier.
She's like some weird neutral third party then. She drops the Orb of Conflict. She's kind of like overseeing the conflict between the others.
Yeah. Well, that's her thing, is she wants to witness conflict. It's her...
It makes sense. Yeah, and we kicked her in the shins a bunch of times, and now her family's showed up to wreck us. So that's awesome. Okay, well that answers a bunch of my questions. I really like that shifting of the complexity over to the passive tree away from the core progression. Is there much reason to like use Maven witnessing boss fights early on then, or is it mostly just if you want to try and get some of those passives early, or some of those awakened gems potentially?
It's good for you to get passives as fast as you can, because they will make it faster for you to play through content implicitly. It increases the rate you're getting rewards and so on. So I suspect players will choose to do it as soon as they're capable of doing it. Of course, as we know, those fights aren't super easy, so people will find the right place for it.
How do we respec the Atlas passive now? With so many passives, I imagine the Orb of Unmaking at least has to be made a lot more common.
Yeah, it's been moved to the core drop pool, basically, so you find orbs when making it a better pace. And yeah, I mean, like all things in Path of Exile, you can fix your mistakes. It's just a pain to do so on a large scale. So we're not expecting people to change their Atlas loadout between maps, but they'll find something that works well for them. And the nice thing, of course, now is it applies to every map on the Atlas, so you don't have to like ignore 3/4 of them because they don't have some specific thing you've specialized in.
I'm gonna ruin chat, by the way, and just say I just got my drop. Thanks. I have a question about co-op progression this time around. Has anything kind of changed there? Can both players unlock their skill tree passives together fully? Like, it was kind of a half and half sort of deal before with the old Atlas system, where you could unlock some map progression, but a lot of the stuff was not, wouldn't work in co-op effectively.
My understanding is that all of the stuff is, providing you're at the right quest state, all of the quest stuff will unlock for everyone in the party. And of course, if you're in a map when it gets completed, and you'd normally get a bonus completion for that, then you do get the completion here. So Yeah, I'm unaware of any issues playing through in co-op, and that's something we're trying to be very mindful of. We don't want to, cause problems for people that want to play through the entire game as a party, and that even applies to like Archnemesis and so on. We're trying to not repeat mistakes from the past where some leagues don't work in co-op.
That's very promising. Yeah, you guys have been getting better with co-op implementation of stuff, which is good because I've been co-oping every league start now, so it's good to see that. Do you imagine that even like boss fights and stuff will unlock co-op progression? Because I know some of that stuff has been turned off a little bit in the past because it was potentially abusable.
Yeah, we have to stop the abuse cases because we don't want a system where, like, at the moment, if you want to play Path of Exile alone or with friends who aren't in your instance, just chatting to them while you're playing, this works. You can have a great experience. There's no reason why you absolutely have to bring friends to Path of Exile. Of course, it's good for social reasons, but games that allow abuse get to this situation where you're either kind of forcing yourself to only play when your friends are playing, or sitting there with 6 Path of Exile clients open doing complicated stuff that isn't actually playing the game. And so that's the reason why we curb the abuse there. But where possible, we want to allow it so that it works well for legitimate groups of players.
Gotcha. One final question before we move to a couple of your questions on this particular topic area. Where's Zana going? Kirek said that she's going into exile, except we're exiles, so shouldn't she be staying with us?
We're not going to give any more info on that. Players can hopefully work it out over time. That's why you play the game, right? To find things out. So all will be revealed in the future.
More seriously, though, like a lot of people like Zana. Is there some potential that we'll be seeing more in the future then?
I'm gonna play a bit coy on that one. We'll see. I mean, we're not just gonna forget about it.
That's a definite yes, chat.
I mean,
she's a great little plot thing that can be thrown in somewhere. Why would you waste that? All right, you need not say more. All right, we have a couple of viewers from chats. Joe Bobs asks, are Atlas passive allocations per character or account?
These are per account, I believe. So we call this per league account, basically. So on your account, you have a separate allocation for hardcore versus the main standard league and so on and so on.
Awesome. It's Kusa asks, how will Awakener level work on Cyrus keys? Will it be Awakener 1 difficulty and rewards?
Oh, this is a good one for the dev check, guys.
Whoa! 2 dev checks.
It's Awakener level 8.
Okay, wow. Yep. That's kind of what happened with the recent change as well, right? Like it shifted upwards like that.
May as well have it be hard.
Yeah, may as well. Especially now that it's not like core content. It's chase content for you to do later on, potentially.
Yeah, the Conqueror stuff is pretty optional.
That's a good follow-up then. Not Lime this asks, can we witness Conquerors? In all caps, by the way. They're excited about this.
Caps, can we witness Conquerors? Yeah, you can.
You can? Oh, okay, that's interesting. So that means potentially a new Conqueror boss fight then. For Maven. Ooh, okay. What happens to the unique watchstones? Nobus asks.
Gone.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we just eradicated. And yeah, all watchstones are gone.
So that strips a couple of things from Cyrus as well. Is there any like buff to his loot drops or anything to compensate, or just?
Cyrus still has good stuff, right?
He does, sure.
Yeah. They're nodding like, of course he has good stuff.
And another question, which I don't have a name for, seems like a lot of currency or bloat. Can you explain what currency was chosen as solutions this time around?
Well, the key thing about currency is that it's tradable. And tradable means that if you do not know how to use it, or you don't have a good opportunity to use it, you're able to trade it to someone else who does better. And so you can get these Eldritch, orbs and essentially just say, I give up, someone else make my items for me, and trade them and get a direct item that you want. You hand someone a pile of this currency, they hand you a finished item, essentially. Is how trade works.
I've never thought of trade like that, but it kind of works.
The thing, obviously, the smart thing to do is to do it yourself and make your best items and not have someone else make a profit, and of course. But for players who do not want to engage in that for whatever reason, they can trade. And it also means if you've got some of one, but you actually want Searing Exarch ones, you can trade them with the other person and so on.
We'll transition now into that whole Eldritch crafting topic. But it seems like we're getting a little bit of Harvest-esque stuff here, some Harvest-inspired things in these Eldritch currencies, particularly with the Chaos Orb, rerolling prefixes or suffixes, annulling prefixes or suffixes, exalting prefixes or suffixes. It's less targeted than some Harvest stuff, but it's kind of in that line. So are you guys excited to move in that direction a little bit with this?
This is a safe way of us doing it. It lets us have these powerful orbs. I should emphasize they're not easy to get, right? We're talking like special exalts here. They're obviously going to be rarer than regular exalts. And so it's a way that we're pretty comfortable because it does require some manipulation of what you're doing with the tiers of the implicit mods, and it's baking in a little bit of metacrafting, but done in a much more safe way that's not quite so combinable with other crazy stuff. So we're more comfortable with this, and it's actually quite a lot of fun to craft items this way.
Yeah, I get it. You kind of limit tested with Harvest. My dream is to like have later you guys add a little step where you can like infuse these orbs with specific target, modifier like fire or something like that by killing a specific high level boss or something like that. But anyway, I'm just excited. Anyways, a couple questions. So are there any risks or major downsides to the new Eldritch implicit crafting system aside from potentially replacing an existing implicit? So like, can you break an item at all?
No, there's no way to break an item. We've basically designed it so that as long as you're okay to replace the implicit that's on something, which is what you just hinted at, then it's generally strictly better. I mean, there might be border cases where having a mod on an item is bad for your build because you really don't want to set things on fire or whatever it is, but other than that, it's always helping your item.
So this is a big contrast from like corruption and just Scourge that we just had. Is this like a progression of the experiments from that system, playing with implicits in this way?
So the main goal here is that you're able to progress your implicits at the same time that you're progressing your explicit mods on an item. We didn't want a thing where you have to like craft a finished item and then have a one-shot go at getting the implicits like corruption. Nor did we want something where if you find a perfect item on the ground, you're screwed to get the implicits that you want. And so if you find an amazing rare item, you, through whatever means, you're able to then make it have amazing implicits on it. And you also won't feel bad putting a lesser implicit. Like if you just get an orb and put an implicit on it, it makes the item better, and you can totally replace that and upgrade it later. There's no problem as you're playing through maps randomly adding implicits to your items, because eventually you can still get the same item into the right place later on.
Random clarification. When you use one of the orbs to increase the tier of the affix, if I'm understanding that correctly, the implicit, does it change what implicit that is, or does it just increase its tier?
Yeah, it does re-roll. So
okay.
There are 4 currency items, and this is super complicated because the word tier, like tier 1 implies the best, right? But when I say higher tier, I'm referring to like tier 1 being the lowest. So we're just going to use clearer language. There are 6 ranks of each mod, 1 through 6. The first one, the lowest one, comes from the lowest currency item. That drops in all maps. And then the second 2 will drop from influenced monsters and influenced maps. And the fourth one, which is the highest you can get from a currency item, drops from the big bosses. There are 2 ranks above that, which cannot be rolled from currency. Those must only be upgraded to with an Orb of Conflict. Whenever you apply one of these orbs to the item, it picks a random mod from the pool and applies it. So you may get something that isn't the one you want. You do have to spam the currency a bit if you were looking for a specific mod.
Yep.
But there's no downside to that. It's not corrupting your item. Aside from the wealth investment that you're making in the item and the ease of trading or finding them, it's entirely just a matter of sinking wealth into the item to get exactly what you're wanting. And in return, of course, they're blindingly powerful. But then once you have the mods that you're wanting, the Orb of Conflict will upgrade and lower them. Sure, you may get a lowering that you don't want, and that wastes some time or resources, but that mod is then fixed in place as that type that's being upgraded or lowered. So in practice, it's a pretty fun system to actually play with currency.
That's interesting because that's pretty different to a lot of crafting in Path of Exile, where there's no real lose case where your previous investment in the item is ruined, but rather the only risk is, well, how much do I have to spend to get the thing that I want this time around? So is that kind of like an intentional decision then to have it be quite different in that way?
It certainly is. It'll create a situation where you're lucky with your rank 3 mod that you get on an item. It's perfect. You love this one. You'd like a rank 4 version, though, but applying the rank 4 thing is potentially going to take a bunch of them to get the same mod, because, the pool's got a bunch of diversity in there.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you could use an Orb of Conflict for this, because you've basically got a 50% chance that you get rank 4 out of it, and so people are going to have to make some decisions. And that's what games are.
Decisions. That's what games are. Perfect. So good games are. I like it.
Clicking and decisions.
Yes, clicking and decisions. Can you craft the Eldritch implicits on unique items as well?
No.
Ah, okay. So, and this is only for helmets, boots, gloves, body armor. So just for armor
Yes, that's
pieces
correct.
currently.
Yeah. I mean, this may gradually expand in the future, but for the time being, this is what we're comfortable with, and honestly, it's quite a lot of power, so it's probably going to be enough for now.
Well, that's a +1 to the chase for rare items in these slots, and on the comparison table between a rare and unique for each slot has to be considered now, especially since they are like effectively low risk to add some power to an item. So that's rather interesting.
That's ideally what you want, is that uniques are kind of guaranteed power, and then rares have the potential to be better, and this helps achieve that.
So the implicits aren't going to have item level requirements, but will using them on a low level item affect their like required level? Can these be used for leveling characters, for example?
Basically, if you were to put one on a low level item, it punches the required level up to something stratospheric that's in maps, because these are like, flat fire damage to all spells and that kind of thing, right?
Okay.
It would clear the campaign pretty efficiently otherwise. But what we meant by this is it can be applied to any eye level of item, right?
Yep.
So you could technically apply it to a low level item if you chose to. You just wouldn't be able to use it unless you're on your high character.
Yeah, you find like a really good pair of boots at level 50 or something. You can.
Yeah, and this is like 68 plus or whatever. It's not like, insanity high.
Yeah, okay. So I that makes sense. I imagine it's like map level 68 required. Got it. Ben the Muffin Man asks, can you get a third implicit by corrupting an item that has 2 Eldritch implicits already?
My understanding is that corrupting the item will remove the existing implicits and put the random corrupted one on. That's correct, right, guys? Yep. So yes, if you want to corrupt an item to get a corrupted implicit, you'll lose all your hard work on the Eldritch implicits. But as you mentioned, Eldritch implicits cannot be placed on uniques, and so corruption still has a very valid place there.
Got it. Okay. Moving on to Archnemesis, the League. Why is it called Archnemesis?
Well, Nemesis was really the only time we've actually worked on improving how rare monsters work. A very long time ago, we said, you know what, let's add some mods to the pool. And Archnemesis is the second time that we're working on improving rare monsters, and it's also a really cool sounding name. Like, there was no debate when we're having our brainstorming session for names, right? Someone said Archnemesis, and people kind of drifted out of the room and started typing it in their documents, and you know what I mean? Like, it just ended at that point. We all knew that was the name.
It was just decided collaboratively.
It is not on the metal banned list, but that doesn't mean that it can't be.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be.
We need people in the community to make metal bands called Archnemesis.
There probably is one out there for sure, right? There's got to be. It's a solid name. But I was like, so what are the Archnemesis monsters there? Because I see there's like a statue, and then there's a rare monster chained to the statue. Mm-hmm. So the rare monster is the thing we're fighting, not the statue. Right. The statue is the thing they're chained to. Okay.
When we spawn an area, we pick a bunch of rares, or adding rares to the area, of course, because we don't want to take your rares away. And we basically get some rare monsters from a disparate set of types where possible. So it's a variety of rares that can spawn in that area. Chain them to statues, and we spawn more than you need. We want you to be having the ability to do 4, but we don't want a situation where the 4th one is hiding around some corner somewhere you didn't explore. And so we spawn like, I can't remember the number, like 6 of these or something like that. I failed the memory game again. And we spawn like 6 of them so that as you play through the area, you'll probably encounter all 4 without having to backtrack. Only the first 4 work, but basically empowering one of those monsters will let you fight that rare, and of course it'll have quite a big fight associated with it. Some of those mods do some pretty crazy stuff.
That sounds like new tech, kind of, the idea of like having a bunch of spawn points pre-plotted out and then only using the 4 that you come across first, right?
Yeah, the level team have been doing some good work over the last few years at adding the ability for us to do fun stuff like this, inserting things into levels, having like, the ability to have like flow graphs of where players can move around the level, and we can predict where we'll be early in a level versus late in a level to spawn stuff, for like delirium mirrors and so on.
It's kind of big because, like you said, it prevents backtracking, which is a big deal, making that like core gameplay loop feel better.
Yeah.
It's great news.
But yes, to answer your question, the Archnemesis monster is the petrified rare that's attached to the statue.
Okay. I feel like there's some secret with the statue, but I might be reading too much into this. It's just because Archnemesis means like the main nemesis is my understanding of the definition. So I'm kind of wondering who is the main nemesis. Anyway, I'm just theory crafting, being suspicious. Archnemesis modified goober things have their own inventory menu for storage, which is certainly a nice improvement over other similar mechanics in the past. Well done. However, when you click them, do they automatically go straight to that menu since they aren't tradable anyway?
That's correct. They automatically go there. You don't need to go through the inventory. We should also talk about clicking here, because we have spent 13 weeks preparing for today, where players are going to say, but these don't auto pick up. Do you not learn? Like, they're going to be sitting there scratching their head going, seriously, GGG, we've told you by now it's auto pick up or nothing, right? So we've been prepared for this. You don't have to find very many of these per area. It is usually around 2, right? And I know in the past I've said that expedition stuff didn't auto pick up because you don't find many, and then when you actually play it scales to like 16 in the crazy juice maps, and yes, that is too many. These mods don't scale. You're finding like 2, maybe 3, but I'm wanting this to be 2 ideally. And so yes, you'll have to probably click twice per area. The thing is, the inventory space, while large, is not completely unlimited, right? Like, there are cases where auto pickup would be annoying. And so we've actually also identified the fact that we need to give more inventory space, which is present in the footage you've seen, where we've increased it to an 8x8 inventory, giving you plenty. In all of our internal testing until like literally 3 days ago, it was a 5x5 inventory, having this awesome constraint thing where players are like frustrated at having to choose what they're carrying around and make decisions, and we love decisions. But at the end of the day, we realized that would not be popular, and so we've significantly increased the space up to 64 slots, which should be plenty. And if you're lucky, you'll find there may even be footage of the 5x5 inventory floating around the internet, because the B-roll footage we gave to journalists earlier this week was still when it was 5x5. And so we had to refilm the entire Archnemesis section of the live stream at the last minute with a new 8x8 inventory so that people don't melt down about the limited amount of space there.
Nice. Well, I often disagree with you on this topic in some capacity, but I will give you that this time it sounds like it's a good case for us manually picking these up, given that we don't necessarily want all of them, and we want to be a little bit choosy with them, maybe.
And it really is like 2 per area that you'll find. And if it's something where you're well into deep, complicated recipes, 4 tiers deep, and then the most common thing ever drops, you're probably not going to want to pick that one up. In addition, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, we are supporting filtering of these. Yeah, you can interact with them with loot filters, and that means that someone will quickly work out what the valuable ones are and make it so people understand whether they even need to make the 2 clicks or not. I'd recommend it during the campaign because you need the reagents to climb the higher recipes, and even the bad ones that give you like some, triple weapon reward or something that you don't necessarily value will be very important to bolster up the complicated recipes that rely on reward conversion later on. So it's not as obvious as they're being good or bad mods, but there are certainly cases where you've already got 7 of something and you don't need an 8th.
Okay. A couple follow-up questions. So you said you're aiming this at being like 2 clicks per zone, which is not too many clicks. But I noticed that you need to spend 4 of them per zone. How's the economy of that work out? Are you intended to not always juice them?
You're going to want to save up for recipes and have a plan. So if you have a completed recipe, you may as well use it when you find the statues in an area. Some of the recipes have up to 4 components. Some of the recipes have just 2. There are cases where you're not completing a recipe, but you're spending mods because you may as well, or you want to, or you've come up with some cool reward combination. But generally speaking, when you're playing through, you don't necessarily feel the need to want to juice out every single statue that you find. You're doing it often enough. Like every second area, you'll probably do a very complicated fight. And for some players, they'll spend their 2 in every area if they're doing simple recipes. But yeah, it's okay to find one where you don't have a mod in order to unlock the monster, because there will be plenty more later on.
Okay. For the people that want to hoard, if you want to hoard, can you pick them up and put them in your regular inventory and stash and things like that as well?
They must stay there, and that's why we increased the count from 25 slots to 64. And this is a surplus now. It's fine, but yes, people who wanted to hoard were having problems at 25, which is something we decided not to have a day 1 Reddit thread of do they not think, and so we decided to think about that one beforehand.
So you've got 2 angles here. They're non-tradable, and you've got to use them or lose them. So use the mechanic, right? Use the current.
This isn't clear from the footage because we're still working on the UI for it, but they do have levels that affect the item you get out. When you're getting like beasts and bestiary and the item level of the output is related to the inputs and that kind of stuff, it's the same here. If you find one in the mudflats as you're playing through the campaign and you think, I'm going to be smart and save that for maps because that's going to be a component to when I get really good uniques or something. No, it's locked at being relatively low level. So you want to be spending them throughout the campaign as you go. Now, we're doing a bunch of stuff to be permissive with levels there, so if you find something in Act 1 and you spend it in late Act 1 or early Act 2, it's still, impactful. Like, we're giving some level grace there, but at the same time, the intention isn't that you just pick up a bunch through the campaign and when you hit maps, you've got 64 reagents good to go for the good rewards. And so because of that, yes, you do want to be using them or losing them pretty much.
All right, okay. Is there much point to killing the Archnemesis without the modifiers? Do they still have their own kind of like set rewards, or is it just kind of basic as killing a rare normally?
You can only release the monster attached to the statue by expending a reward. So you may choose to expend spare rewards just releasing monsters and getting the stuff from them. Like, I find a thing that gives me a currency reward. If it's not part of my master plan, I should probably pick it up and just use it on the next statue so I get a fight and get some rewards. But you can't just tag the rares and fight them without giving them a property.
Oh wow, so it really is potentially an every other map sort of situation, or stockpile for a while and then blast them for 10 maps,
A
depending on your
lot of,
preference.
because you're getting around 2 per area, a lot of fights are totally fine with 2. Like, that's what you're kind of wanting to do. So you may, playing the default way, get to have a fight in every area, but you'll also find
Mm.
situations where you want to build up to 4. There's also the thing where we don't just assume the players can handle a 4 fight, right? Like, that's quite tricky. You want to have a look at what type of monster it is. Maybe if you have a 4 fight that you want to do, it's better to put it on something small like a squid or something like that, rather than necessarily a big beast or whatever.
I think with all the 4 heads in chat, everyone can handle the 4 fight, but we'll see. Sorry. So some of the mods can be combined in recipes to produce more dangerous mods. Do you have a way of like discovering / tracking this recipe system at all, or is it kind of like a lookup POEDB list or chart that someone's made, sort of deal?
So we have a hinting system in the inventory where if, and this isn't shown in the footage, I should add, but this is in there now. If you have a complete recipe that you can just do, then there is a subtle shader effect on those things to say this is a component of a recipe. And once you put some in the window,
Ooh.
then the remaining ones for that recipe have the shader effect on them. And the shader effect is more significant if the recipe is a larger, more important, valuable recipe. And so basically, as long as you just say, oh, I've got some stuff I can do, you'll work out what the recipes are. Like, that system there basically tells them to you without explicitly saying this plus this plus this in a UI somewhere. And so it'll be pretty obvious what recipes you can complete. The goal is not that these are like hidden rune words where where the community spends weeks working them all out. Like, they'll get them in the first day or two. It's going to be, many people will be able to look at the wiki to get the list if they want, but you won't need to if you just have an okay memory and look at what the UI clues tell you.
In that case, how much impact on reward does the fused modifiers have? It seems like it makes them potentially quite a lot harder.
Right, so a lot of the better rewards, the ones that do interesting conversion, come from the higher tier ones. So an
Ooh.
example is Innocence Touched that was in the presentation, right? So that's the pinnacle of like up four or five tiers of reward combinations. It's hard to get to, that's the thing that you put together by maps and only get to do occasionally. And that does some really interesting reward conversion. So you could just get Innocence Touched and then fight it and get those rewards, but you'll realize that juicing Innocence Touched with 3 other mods, A, makes it really blindingly difficult, and B, gives you a giant pile of juiced rewards that are all like, exponentially combinatorial with the other mods that you've chosen.
Well, that does answer my next question as well, then, that you can potentially recipe together already recipe things going up
Yeah.
tiers of modifiers. So it sounds like that
It's,
goes like 4 deep or something.
to some extent, we've understated the recipe part of it, because the recipe climbing is what the whole league is meant to be about, except that a lot of the fun is just doing the fights and combining stuff in your own recipes. Like, to some extent, the make your own reward combinations, because the design team put together really interesting conversion, to some extent that took over from the official recipes, just because there's so much cool stuff people can discover there. So yeah, there's kind of 2 ways of getting good rewards from the league.
Are you worried that this will be a bit Talisman-esque in the end then? Because that was kind of the similar concept with Talisman, but didn't work out so well in the end.
I think this is significantly more rewarding.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. We were doing a lot of work for just the talisman in that case. Is there like a substantial visual difference between the good recipe ones that you've made versus just the regular ones? Because I'm wondering if we're just kind of mapping on the fly and just tossing ones in, getting random recipes out, but saving the recipes, is that like easier to do?
The items themselves look more elaborate if they're higher tier ones. It'll be
Okay,
pretty
good.
obvious from the properties of it, and when you're fighting it, you'll certainly know that's an impactful boss thing. And
Oops.
it basically just all scales up. Like, it'll be pretty obvious which ones are good.
Okay, that's good. How does Archnemesis work in parties then, the league side of things?
So the map owner, who's like the person who's controlling the area, gets the core Archnemesis mod drops, and we're very careful to try to get this to be about 2 per area. The supplementary party members will also receive their own drops, and it has their own system of trying to force it so that they're not getting too many per area, but they're still getting some. So there's a system there where players are all receiving drops as they play through to accumulate their own mods. Now, in an area, any of the players can do a recipe, but it's locked so that once you've put mods in it, that player who put the mods in must be the person who puts the remaining mods in. This prevents a TFT-style backdoor complicated trade system that would completely change how the league plays intentionally, but it also means that the rewards go to the person who put the mods in, right? So if you and I are playing and we've accumulated a bunch of stuff, and in this area I want to complete my recipe, so I stick my mods in, you can't help me by putting any of yours in to complete it early, and then I get the rewards from that because it was my recipe. as in the specific mod that's created and the specific things that drop from the combination we put together goes to me. You get, random allocation of the other items the boss drops. But in the next area, you could then do your recipe and you get the benefit of that one. So as we're playing through in a party, you just kind of alternate who's doing large recipes. And it works pretty well.
Get rolled, TFT. Classic. But if you're the map opener, you're the only one who can put the mods in the first place, right?
Any player can start putting mods in. So if someone
really?
rushes in and sticks a mod in ahead of you, then it's their instance in terms of putting mods in.
They've locked it in. That's That's very different to how it normally works.
This is basically through playtesting where we want to make sure that it's done in a way that's fair. And unfortunately, the problem is if you have a system where I can put in half, like I've collected half of the best recipe and you've collected the other half, right? If I can stick my half in, you can stick your half in, then the balance is incredibly skewed in terms of people converging on the best stuff too quickly. So we would have to nerf it to compensate, which we don't want to do. And it also creates a system where now the second you get half of the best recipe, you go to some Discord and start spamming to get the other half. And that's not really the game. Here you have a progression that you can control. You don't have to spend a lot of time out of game trying to find it. And because of that, we can make it punchy and rewarding. We don't have to harvest it down to be bland because of the fact that there's tradability there.
Well, this is fantastic from the party play perspective because I can, if I'm opening them all the maps, which is usually how we run it, then I can put all mine in and run mine, and then my partner can collect up a bunch of mods, and then I can open a map later in the future, and they can start putting in some mods without having to dance to their hideout and put in their map and stuff like that.
Exactly. So, the only concern is if you want to put stuff in that instance, and they also want to use that instance to put stuff in, then you have to kind of choose who's going to do it, and that's a race to who puts the first one in. But to be completely honest, there are more maps, right? Like
there's always another map. But yes, like all things in life, proper communication with your partner is very important. Communicate, collaborate. All right. Can you search the Archnemesis inventory? Is there a search bar? I can see that being a requested feature if there isn't.
Like, as in you type in part of the name and it finds it. It's a reasonable suggestion. It hasn't come up. Like, it wasn't a big issue because I think that by the time because you can control where they go, you take your good ones and you put them in the corner, and you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So you kind of do understand where your stuff is, but I don't see any harm in adding the search bar, right? Like, we're not philosophically opposed. It may already be done. In fact, there may be someone watching this going, I should do that. But
some UX designers he doesn't see the harm in it.
Or they're thinking it's been in for 4 weeks. What is this guy doing?
Okay, we'll see.
Is there a search bar, guys? Is there a highlighting thing for the Archnemesis inventory? There wasn't last time I checked. Yeah. Yeah, okay. We don't think so. The memory game again.
I just made more work for someone. Sorry. HMS Sin asks, can Headhunters steal the Archnemesis monster's unique modifiers? Oh no.
That's a great question. I remember it being discussed. Can Headhunters steal the mods?
Pretty sure we can't allow that for a variety of reasons.
I mean, they don't want it to. You just fixed a bug. It may already be handled, but there were some blank stares from...
Oh, getting it caught in time. You got a week.
Can a developer who's watching this please fix this? And if you don't, Reddit gets that one.
Very good. All right, we have a few other random questions, and then a bunch more questions from the community. Good job, mods. Okay, so I noticed that there are no new skills revealed this time. Why is that?
You weren't supposed to notice.
Oh, it's like that, isn't it?
We had 13 development weeks for this expansion, and we had a lot of scope. Like, this was one of those big endgame ones with a league that we needed to make, and it just didn't make the scope, right? And we also felt that the game actually has quite a lot of skills, and by buffing 2 significant archetypes so extensively, like we just literally took dozens of skills and made big improvements to them. This is kind of combined with the new Eldritch implicits that have a lot of build enabling stuff. We're not worried about the game having nothing for people to do. It's a resourcing issue, and pretty much the fact that this isn't, there's going to be plenty of new builds for people to play.
Well, yeah, I can imagine some people are going to be disappointed because a lot of people do specifically want to always play the new skills. But I was speaking to Bex a little bit about this earlier, and she was saying like our dev resource budget for making a new skill and getting it in is actually quite high. So it is kind of like a costing decision there.
It certainly is. So it's mostly, we'd rather do this expansion well than make a few skills. And to be honest, like the number of players who want to specifically play the new skills as a matter of course is only like a small portion of the player base. And I'd rather make content for 100% than for like 7% or whatever. But, obviously will be, skills added to the game in the future. The other thing is like, occasionally players will say to us, hey, what you should do is not make new skills and instead fix the existing ones. And while that can't be true forever, it is something we've tried to do here. We've tried to take entire archetypes of bow users and handcast spellcasters and to fix them up quite a lot. So that should be impactful. And for people who want to try new skills, I'm sorry there aren't any in this particular one, but hopefully there are skills that have been new in the past that you haven't tried out yet that will now be a lot more powerful.
Okay. So Ultimatum has not yet made a return, though in some ways Archnemesis does remind me of it. But is there any word on its rework and return, as previously mentioned?
This was a resourcing issue as well. We realized that to get it in the game in the state we want requires quite a lot of work, and that wasn't going to fit in 3.17 alongside this stuff. The Atlas stuff has been rather large, and so we do intend to bring Ultimatum back in the right form, but it's not this time.
All right, potentially next time, DM. Awakened Gems seem to keep getting... You kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'll bring it back up again anyway. Awakened Gems seem to keep getting nerfed. And I'd kind of guessed that with Cyrus and the Conquerors being semi-retired now, I guess, we'd be shifting away from them being a chase or an expected progression for builds. But it seems now that they've been made a drop from the Maven boss fights, they're staying core, somewhat at least. How do you guys feel about Awakened Gems in general, and what's the goal with them?
We see them as core, and we think they benefit many builds. In fact, we wish there were more of them that would benefit more builds. Like, it would be nice if there were Awakened support gems for literally everyone. This is not a feature announcement. That's literally just us thinking aloud. I don't even think we're planning any in the next few
guaranteed
expansions. We think it's important for you to have something that you can get from the Maven that will help improve your late game damage. The boss fights are hard, right? Like, you need this. It's punchy. If you can use Awakened gems, you should definitely farm for them and get them.
So this is from the Maven's boss fights. The Maven boss fight as well. Does she get like a high chance to drop one or something?
I'm gonna dev check that.
Oh, it's like 9.
Awakened gems, are they from the Maven boss fight herself or from the other invitations?
They're from the boss fight itself, and the lesser ones that were previously just dropped by the Conquerors will be available from the regular invitations.
So the Maven herself is the one who drops the good ones, and the lesser ones that were previously from the Conquerors are the ones that come from the invitations. Actually by the Maven.
Thank you, Rory. So that's kind of good as well, because it had kind of been felt that the Maven's rewards were a little bit underwhelming compared to, say, Cyrus or some of the other bosses.
I think there's also... Yesterday we had this conversation. In fact, I shouldn't be saying stuff like this. We were reading some of the drafts of questions that we may be asked, right? Doing our prep for this. And we get to this exact point of what are we doing about Maven rewards with regard to, is the Awakened Gem sufficient? And then we decided to buff a bunch of Maven uniques. So yes, to get to your exact point that the Maven rewards were underwhelming, there are buffs to those, which were added literally at the last minute in the patch notes. Like, the patch notes were approved and done and sent to translators, and the formatting's ready and we're good and we're celebrating. And then someone says, we need to buff these uniques, so everyone gets writing again. And so I hope that actually happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good news if so. I hope so too. I'd like to see some spicy chase there for sure. All right. Okay, we've got some more community questions now, a lot. So apparently literally everyone, and I just have to read this proviso first. Bex said we could ask this question, apparently. So I guess blame. Why was this not presented from a hot tub?
Thank you, Bex. Okay, so I have a hot tub at my house, and I hadn't used it in a couple of years. And when we did it came with the house, I should add, but when we did the Halloween board, the one that said one gigantic Atlas tree, Bex says, you're welcome. Oh, cute. Anyway, when we did the Halloween board and we had the stream from a hot tub, because of course that was topical back, a few months ago when we did that, I thought to myself, I bet you I'm going to be asked to do this, and this thing needs cleaning. Like, it's been a few years since anyone used it. This hot tub needs to be sorted out. And so I was sitting there, like, hot summer sun, like, getting sunburnt, scrubbing this hot tub, in my spare time, just in case we needed to do it for this live stream. And then, thankfully, made a judgment call that no, for the sake of a meme, I'm not going to, confuse 99% of the players.
Yeah.
But it could have happened. Like, there's a very close parallel reality here.
Yeah, the like 1% of people who pay uber attention to these memes would have loved it, but 99% of people would
There's
just be
also the
like,
risk
I
of,
see
like,
the hot
you
tub.
accidentally violate some rule. Like, turns out that's not allowed now or something like that, and then instantly the stream's cut off, and then we just, torpedoed a whole in marketing thing,
All the press reporting focuses on you being on a hot tub and doesn't care at all about the expansion. That's just what gets reported. Perfect. All right. Someone asks, how does the Ascendancy gems work with the Scion?
I don't think they do. The Ascendancy
jewels.
jewels, the Scion.
It works.
Oh, it does? You guys are smart. How does it work?
She has her own set.
Right. She has her own set of special mods.
Oh,
So, yeah.
okay. That's that jewel though. I was like looking at it and I was like, holy moly, there's a lot of versions of that
Yeah.
jewel.
We tried to make it clear in the stream, but to be clear, they have class restrictions, and they will give you an ascendancy of your class from a different ascendancy. So if you're a Deadeye, you can get a Pathfinder 1 or a Raider 1. You can't get a Juggernaut 1 as a Ranger.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they do let you splash outside of your ascendancy class, enables tons of new builds, but it does not let you get something incredibly off class yet.
Yeah, okay, that's great. We don't have tailored drops like that typically.
Yep. Unless you're an Ascendant, which does have a bunch of off-class stuff, they clarify. So to answer your original question, yes, that's how you get your super off-class stuff.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, so multiple layers to that. So you can splash stuff from other ascendancies on your character, regardless of you not being that ascendancy. You just have to be a ranger if you get a ranger
Yes.
one.
You're getting any ranger ascendancy on a ranger. You don't have to be a Pathfinder to get an additional Pathfinder node. So it's not about getting an extra ascendancy point. It's about getting an extra ascendancy point outside of your ascendancy class, but within your class.
Wow, okay. It also means from like a farming potential, if you're like wanting to sell these or something, you might want to be like the class that is the chase version of these.
You don't find one for your class. It's like Hellfire Torches. You find one, and if you're lucky, it's your class.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I was getting confused between the two things there.
There are 7 classes. They'll drop for a random class, and then the node that it picks for that class is one which is from any of its ascendancies, and you need to be that class to equip it.
Okay, all right. But you're playing a Marauder, you can get a Ranger one to drop.
You're playing a Marauder, you can get a Ranger one, and that Ranger one will have any Ranger ascendancy passive on it, including outside of the person who equips its class. Yeah, I made this more confusing than it needed to be with my explanation here.
I was surprised because we don't normally have tailored drops like that in here.
No, it's not a tailored drop. It's I'm just clarifying the fact that a Ranger cannot equip a Juggernaut ascendancy skill from this. Okay.
But the question nonetheless revealed some pretty awesome stuff, so that's exciting. Okay, Lufathol asks, can we apply these new Eldritch implicits in unique items? Well, we already answered that one. What happens when we use Chance Orbs on these items? Oh, that's an interesting one. Chance Orbing an item with an implicit existing. Oh, 11 dev checks.
So they can't be chanced into uniques anymore once they've got
It's similar to synthesized items where once they have these on it, you can't chance them into uniques.
Destroyed. Very nice.
Path of Exile really is a game of will the community or our limited team of developers think of it first. There's millions of you guys, and these guys here are real smart. And
a lot of people are also asking about tainted currency as well. What's happening with that?
I believe tainted currency does not drop anymore, right, guys?
Correct.
Yeah. No more tainted currency for now. For the record, I really like tainted currency, so we may see it again in the future in some form, but no, all of Scourge is going away for now.
Yeah, I like, well, I certainly like the easier 6 links. That was a very popular thing. And how do you guys feel about that? Because I feel like every time you guys have made 6 links easier to acquire, it's been universally praised.
Yeah. I feel if we made it so it auto picked up items, people would praise it. And then if we made it so that, like, these appear in a spreadsheet rather than a stash tab, people would praise it. And then if we made it so you don't need to log in for it to find the items, people would praise it. And then if it just emails you a daily update of how cool you are.
Alright, calm down. Calm down.
I think easier 6 links is going to get praised until the game has no valid progression anymore.
While that may be true, I think this is slightly different because I think this touches on the issues with the current socketing system, which you guys already agree to.
Yep.
You've removing the whole thing in PoE2.
I was explicitly pushing for easier 6 links for the longest time, right? Like whenever there's an opportunity over the last decade to make 6 linking easier, I'm saying do it. So I agree in this case. Partly because 6-linked items are going away in PoE 2, and now it's a matter of 6-linked gems. And
yeah, I figure it's going away soon. Why not just give everyone their 6 links pretty easily? It's it's so much nicer. But anyway, okay, all right. It's us. Would it be possible to color the new implicit text according to the mod? Eldritch blue text and the other one red. Accessibility feature request.
you can press Alt to see more information, and that way the item looks normal and easily readable, and then you tap Alt and you get a overload of stuff.
Okay, all right.
We are putting it on the advanced mod description stuff, right?
Also, one's on the top and one's on the bottom.
Yeah.
They're always in the same
Which one is on the top? Do you remember? There is an order. We'll check it.
Cleansing fire.
Yeah.
Searing
It's
fire.
likely the cleansing. It's likely the Searing Exarch is on the top. We'll find out though. So it's also worth noting we've removed the option for advanced mod hovers. Now it's just mandatory. For some reason, this is the thing we added with a default of off. So a new player installs the game, presses Alt, and doesn't get stuff. And so that's definitely just on with the option removed now. So anyone who hated it for some reason, it's mandatory.
Yeah, I as a streamer, you often have to be like, why don't I get that text?
Okay,
Can
and
you
here's an
enable it?
amazing thing for our international players. In this release, when you press Alt while looking at an item, it will show the unique name and base type in English in brackets, and so you can Google for them. So, I mean, I guess if you were having problems with this, you probably can't understand this. But anyway, someone please tell the international players that you can now see what the items are. And this is really important for builds. Like, imagine you're playing the game in a language and you struggle with English, and you find a cool unique, and you're looking at, say, the Russian name for it, and you Google for it to find out what build to play. You won't find the English build guides, whereas now you can find the English one. We've also added experimental support, like an early version of Japanese for testing. I forget the instructions of how to enable it. It might just be, I think you have to go -- language Japanese on the command line, but if anyone would like to give us some feedback on that, we'll be opening a forum. It's not finished yet. Like, this is just the baseline kind of, quarter of it done or something like that. And we'll ideally get that done over the next months to a year.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome stuff to hear. Yeah, I can say that will be really helpful as well.
I could just read the patch notes to you all day and just delay that actually.
Well, I mean, you'll be releasing them like in a moment, so
yes,
it's all right. People can read. Cyclops Fear asks, will a Blessed Orb then re-roll the numbers on both Eldritch Implicits at the same time, or only one of them, or any of them? I'll add.
Blessed Orbs and Eldritch Implicits. Do they even have ranges?
Most of them won't, because they've got the ranks instead.
Yeah, so a lot of Eldritch Implicits do not have explicit ranges for the implicits on them because they have 6 different ranks instead. And if they do have ranges, does Blessed Orb reroll them?
If we have any of them that do, they do. I can't
Right.
confirm that we do have any.
Yeah, so it will work if there are any. We just can't think of any that currently have ranges.
Okay. There's a 2-part question here from Major Influx. Since there's no more unique watchstones to give +1 zone level, is there any way to get like higher level maps like 85 and whatnot?
Unique watchstones would add to the map level before, like to increase the area level of the area. Are there any ways to do that now? I can't think of any.
Atlas passive for unique maps, but that's about it.
Yeah, there's an Atlas passive for unique maps, but currently no.
Okay, so that kind of maybe answers the other question then, if there's any way to get item level 85 ritual helmets. So that kind of, I guess, kills that as well. Then.
That's needed, then not at the moment, sorry. It's worth noting that our intention here is to continue to evolve this new endgame system in subsequent expansions. Like, the previous era of dropping an entirely new endgame every year may not necessarily happen a year from now. I mean, the goal basically is to continue working on this one because we like it and try to incrementally improve it in each expansion rather than dropping a completely new one each year. We think that will actually give people a lot more to work towards in the endgame with each league, as opposed to just seeing the league content and trying out a couple of new builds. We actually give them some new stuff to do in the endgame as well.
There was a lot of talk about, like, well, there's major damage buffs for hand casting and bow builds, hit bow builds, but totally not at work. 64 asks, will there be any changes regarding mobility and defense options for hand casters?
We did a massive defense buff in one of the recent expansions, and as you'll notice, we didn't nerf any of that. So, well, I don't know, maybe we did, but I don't think we nerfed any of that. And so, no, the answer is we don't have any improvements in this expansion beyond the ones that we listed in the manifesto. I mean, the full patch notes are coming out very soon, so there may be bits and pieces that I'm unaware of, but yeah, you've heard the majority of that stuff that affects that.
All right. Shade Finale asks, is Elevated Nemesis also removed from the game? You said only Awakened Nemesis specifically in the video. I don't actually know what that means.
Referring to sextants, maybe? Sorry, you said Awakened Nemesis? An Elevated
It
Nemesis?
says Elevated Nemesis, Nem 4, chat's typing. What does that mean? Am I missing something?
It doesn't give that mod anymore.
The Elevated Sextant does not give that mod anymore.
Ah,
I'm glad,
okay, they're
like,
talking about
someone
sextant
understands
mods. Okay. Alright. Pie by Pie asks, does quest tracking help guide us through the new Atlas and bosses?
I believe it will do, right? New Atlas quests. Does it have a quest tracker?
Yes.
Yep.
I think we're getting the wrap things up signal, so I'll ask a big question is, reports on hard mode, it was said to be happening early to mid this league, right? Is that still the case?
We really expect hard mode to be in some form of early testing before the next live stream. Or we'll be releasing it at the next league, right? I'm going to make sure that one of these two happens. So the full... And people... Like, there's face palming going on. Because it's a lot of work, right, to finish it. It's been taking a while. So the overpromises by me are not appreciated. But yeah, I think it's quite doable. It'll just be, some weekends for me to get that sorted out.
All right. And kind of a follow-up to some stuff that was started earlier as well, is there any more like act reworks planned?
So there's a bunch of work that happened in Act 2 in this expansion, I believe. But it's not as extensive as the Act 1 stuff that we did before. Can you clarify?
That is correct. Just a resourcing issue.
Yeah, resourcing basically is that us revamping the earlier acts is like the last thing on the list of things we want to get. I mean, we want to get to it, but it gets pushed out each time relatively easily. So, yeah, we'll keep working on that as we can do.
All right, and also people also just want to know if there's any like PoE Mobile or PoE 2 news as well that they can like keep an eye out for.
They are both coming along really well. We decided not to include any content in this particular live stream, both because it was already very featureful and because we'd honestly rather get more stuff to show you guys. And there's still a way on both projects, right? Like, they're not being released this year. Very likely, I mean, our internal target that we're looking at is tentatively the end of next year, right? So that's could change, but that's what we're looking at. And so I would expect a good year of clear, like, hype marketing for those as we get closer to them. And that year hasn't quite started. So we may do an update in the interim. It really depends. And I kind of feel it's one of those things where we don't want to just drip feed tiny little bits and pieces, because if we it's PoE 2 stuff and then we show you a small thing, people will say, is that literally all you've done in the last year? And it gives the wrong impression. So I would rather actually have something impactful to show. And making a PoE 2 trailer takes a lot of work.
So we're kind of looking forward to a big hype kind of reveal again. Like, remind people like, oh yeah, this is what you were excited for back at ExileCon.
Don't expect PoE 2 at the next live stream necessarily, right? Like, it's but at some stage you will get an update and it will be worth it. And in the meantime, we want to make meaningful Path of Exile expansions, and there'll be plenty to do in this one. In fact, Twitch chat was saying, is this PoE 2? Should be called PoE 2 from some of the stuff we announced, so I appreciated that.
Well, we've certainly been getting a lot of PoE 2 stuff that was teased, and now we're going to be endgame rework, so super exciting. Look, there was a ton more questions, folks. I thank you all for asking them. I tried to get through as many as I could, but we are holding up the patch notes. So thank you very much for your time, Chris. We're going to let you go. And you can go get those patch notes out. Press the button, please.
Yep. Right, enjoy the league, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you later.